contributors trying to get big name contributors would take time, and it would take a lot of time and cut into my filming time. And the positive, if I get that, it will be more interesting. My documentary will be a lot more interesting. Is an overall summary of all the other guidelines and other ones that could be key at privacy and confidence. Not showing any of my contributors like phone numbers and stuff. Keeping all the confidential side of it. And my budget, the main ones I thought about. I think about were location fees, travel costs, lighting costs, DV cameras, and archive footage payments. That's all. Commercial viability. Other documentaries that were similar was Graham Taylor's Impossible Job. Looks like when England failed to qualify for the '94 World Cup, and in that year, he was blamed for it, but then he actually said that it was all down to the English youth system not having enough players coming through. And that's all the problems. Football Icon is one that looks at gives young players the chance to sign for Chelsea and gives them trials from all around UK. And Football's Next Door is kind of similar, but this one's that it gave youths the chance to sign for Inter Milan instead of Chelsea, but they had to complete various tasks and then had to travel to Italy and train with Italy for Inter Milan first team. Distribution. This documentary will be aired on Saturday, straight after the final score, because all of my target audience will actually be watching it at the same time at that time, so it'll come on straight after. The reason for this is that all the football fans will be watching final score, so they wouldn't need to change the channel or anything. They would just like have a nice flow with it. And other programs that appeal to the same audience of Football Focus. So that's it. Any questions? I can make it more appealing to females. Do you think it's the right angle for the topic? Any other questions?
Okay, lovely, thank you, Abdi. It's a nice, clear presentation, that, and nice and concise and to the point. But I still get a very good idea about what you're doing, Abdi. Thank you very much.
I can genuinely say it was one of the least painful ones of those I've watched, to be honest.
Take that as a big compliment.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I really like the whole idea of this. But again, a bit like Kirsty's one, there's a fear where this could go massive, because I like the idea that your two key people are going to be your friend Steve at Dagenham and Redbridge and Connor, because they're going to give you a really good focus. I don't know how many more people you actually want after that, do you? Because if you say they're a minute each, at least on an interview, that's 2 minutes taken up just with them before you even got anything else in there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, sir?
I was thinking whilst I was watching this, I think you can get into talking at some point, because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking you could speak to the guy from Dagenham and Redbridge, Steve, who's talking about what the benefits are of having foreigners, because obviously Dagenham and Redbridge they do have some foreign players there, don't they? It's not all British lads. I think talking to Connor about why he felt like he didn't break through, I think that's another good idea, because he went all over, didn't he, trying to get... I mean, he was up in Aberdeen for trials, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And he's very good as well, isn't he? That's the thing.
I think the other thing that I was thinking about is a third piece as a solution to this. There's a futsal league in, you know what futsal is, the little indoor football thing, which is designed, I think, was it the Portuguese or the French or Spanish, one of the European people came up with it. It's specifically designed a few years ago to improve skills in young kids. And there was a futsal league set up in Newham. It's literally just starting now, running out of it's a school just across the road from Upton Park, and it runs very regularly. And I thought it might be worth maybe going down there. It's specifically aimed at young people, 12 to 16-year-olds, because I think then we could talk about that technique, because that's always been the argument. It's the argument certainly against British football at the moment. We focus too much on athletes rather than... say again? Yeah, rather than the technical side. That's why most of the England team were born before Christmas rather than in the last 8 months of the year, because they were the bigger lads in their year group. So I think the futsal thing is certainly something that might be worth looking at as a third part of your documentary.
Yeah, that makes sense then, because it gives it a proper structure, doesn't it? This is about foreign players and why they can be positive. This is about someone's experience about why they've not made it, even though they're very good. Not made it, but they've not made it into the Premiership. And this is actually brings in your European stuff. How come Spain or wherever won it? Is it because they're using a system like this one that has now been introduced here? Because I think that gives it a real nice rounded picture. Kirsty, what are your thoughts? Being a female.
Just a curious question. What's the 25-man squad?
Is that the FA said that every team has to have a 25-man squad limit, so they have, like, you can't have more than 25 players playing in one season.
Oh, okay.
Before it was like you can have anyone playing, but then they have to cut down players.
So like Man U, for instance, Kirsty, they would pay a Chinese footballer on their books, so then they would sell more shirts in China because people would want, a local, a national person on their backs, on their shirts, but then they'd get to come in for like 5 minutes of one game in the whole season, and so they don't ever get to play properly. And that's what happens with I presume with English players, is it that they have them on their books but they don't play them?
Okay.
Well, right in thinking that the under 21 players are exempt from the 25-man squad. Yeah, so it's to basically bring through more young players into the game. I think the other really interesting one to look at in terms of directives from the FA is the 90 minutes from home rule. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Which one?
Where you're only allowed to play for an academy which is 90 minutes away from your home. The idea was it was to stop players from moving around so that the kids stayed in their area and helped local clubs. However, that left a gaping loophole where Man United can't sign a player from like East London, but they can sign a player from Sao Paulo. So Man United now, that's what immediately their reaction to that was to go after the French lads that they brought in, to go after the Brazilian twins. So that rule has kind of destroyed what they were setting out to do. So that might be something. It might be, you might just have a list of legislation that they've introduced and explain how that's worked and how it's worked for it, how it's worked against it. So that might be something that you would explore in your documentary.
And that might work well, because if Kirsty didn't understand what it means, I didn't understand. Well, I could have a guess, but I didn't know quite what it meant. You might need something at the beginning to draw the females in, who are less likely to know the ins and outs of it. And what you talked about there was potentially doing a millionaire type thing. Why don't you do it in, like, when they do the graphics at the beginning, when they're talking about what the lineup of the squad is, and they have like what is it called? 4-3-4.
4-4-2.
That's it, all that. You could do it like that. So you're saying, and the home goal that they scored was to do it as if you're a football pundit, but you're actually telling us how the FA have bodged up some of the legislation and bringing up like all the things that maybe they didn't think about and how it's gone wrong. That might make it a bit more light-hearted and getting the facts across, because millionaire's got nothing to do with football, whereas if you do it in a football style, or say, let's have a replay of that and then we find out what went wrong with it, that kind of thing, that might work quite well with the style. I think you could do a nice thing with that. I don't know about this idea of bringing this girl in. I don't really know what her role is. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what you think, sir. I don't know if there's enough time for her.
I don't know if it's Maddie that you're talking about, isn't it? I can see exactly why you're doing it to make the brief, but I think it might actually end up detracting from what you're trying to do.
Because that's a whole other issue about women in football, isn't it? That's a whole other ball game about how women are breaking through or not and all that. And I think really the link for me, the way I've seen it is, why did England not do very well? It's because they haven't got enough English players in their Premier League teams. Why is that the case? Then if you bring in English women in the England team, there's loads of English women there's loads of English women in Premier League women's leagues, aren't there? So I think if you bring the woman thing in, it might get it a bit sort of tangled up, really. So Kirsty, what are you going to say?
To the female subject, from like watching your presentation.
Sorry, Kirsty, let me just stop you.